Shi Yousan, aka the Defector General, and Shi turns 3 times for his triple betrayal of Feng Yuzhang in 1926, 1929, and in 1930. And he is also known as the Slave of 6 Surnames, as surnames refers to being the prominent people and organizations that he pledged himself to. It's a reference to the ancient historical Chinese warlord Lu Bu, who is also known as the Slave of 3 Surnames, as he had pledged his loyalty to 3 different dudes and also betrayed them. Some of his notable joinings and defections accounts were betraying the forces of Wu Pifu, Feng Yushang, Chiang Kai-shek, Wang Jiwu, Zhang Zuliang, and even the Chinese Communist Party. Keep in mind that these were some of his successful betrayals and defections, as he had planned many more that were unsuccessful. Now, if Shi Yousan's nicknames pique your interest, then you should probably stick around for this video about him and the chaos that is the Chinese warlord era. Also, bear with me here, I'm an American, and most likely gonna butcher a lot of these names. But hey, that's how you know I'm not AI generated, right? Shi Yousan was born in 1891 and would attend school where one of his teachers was a teenage Shang Zhen, who would also become a future Chinese warlord. At one point, Shi attended a martial arts school for 3 months where he learned hand-to-hand combat skills, but he was expelled after attempting to convince another student to take his exams for him. Anyway, in 1909, Shi ditched his studies and joined the army like a legend, and became a member of Warlord Wu Piefu, aka the Jade Marshal's forces, in the 3rd Division of the New Army, in a unit under the command of future Chinese President Cao Kun. Cao's forces would be Shi's first of many betrayals, as in February of 1912, motivated by unpaid salary and the controversial decision of Yuan Shikai to name Beijing the new capital in place of Nanjing, Shi and his troops kicked off the Renzi Mutiny, where they just completely abandoned Cao. Shi then answered the recruitment call by Feng Yuxiang, aka the Christian general who converted his troops to Christianity. Anyway, Feng described Shi as having the head of a deer and the eyes of a rat, and being as skinny as firewood, which stood in stark contrast to Feng, who was grossly overweight. Feng rejected Shi's request to become a soldier in his army due to Shi's very short height, being only 4 feet and 8 inches tall. He then referred to Shi as 8 inches, and he let Shi become a stableman to watch horses. Despite being a stable boy and being a school dropout, Shi still possessed a significantly higher education than most of Feng's soldiers and officers, and thus he gradually rose through the ranks after he gained Feng's favor after he displayed strategic mindset during tactical meetings with other officers, and he also showed off his martial arts skills, which impressed many. Sensei Shi then distinguished himself in combat during the Zili-Anhui War in battles such as the Battle for Puyang Province under the control of warlord Chang Sufan, where previous engagements had been failures. However, Shi organized a 120-man so-called death squad, as he called it, and paid each man $3 silver and led the storming of the village and won the battle, taking over the area. During his time in Feng's army, Shi became close to Gao Shuxan, a future KMT and CCP general who joined his company in 1916 and would regularly serve directly under Shi for the following decade. The pair got along very well and became blood brothers, but sadly this would eventually take a dark turn, and that's called foreshadowing, so hold that thought. In 1924, Shi and bandit soldier Louis Gutang led the North China National Protection Army, which was a largely independent unit that were known for engaging in banditry and robbery in the rural areas around Beijing. I mean, they're led by Gui Tang, so yeah. Anyway, Shi became promoted to the rank of commander of the 6th Division in September of 1924. In October of that year, Feng launched the Beijing coup to overthrow President Cao Kun, who Shi had previously abandoned, and Feng established the Guominzhong. Shi became one of the 13 Guardian Protectors, considered to be the most important commanders in the Guominzhong, and he subsequently commanded the 8th Mixed Brigade of the 1st Army. In 1926, he gained the rank of Lieutenant General in the Bieyang Army. During the Anti-Fengtian War, aka the 3rd Zili-Fengtian War, the Guominzhong was fighting against another of Shi's former superiors, being Wu Pifu. In 1926, Shi's troops were stationed at Beijing under regular threat of the Zili and Fengtian clique alliance. Yan Zhishan attacked the rear of the Guominzhong from Shaanxi, where Xia and Han Fuju's forces were sent to fight against Yan's army. Due to the inferiority of their strength, Shi and Han brokered a non-aggression pact with Yan, although Shi's former teacher Shan Zhen, without Feng's knowledge, staged the retreat in August. The main force of Feng subsequently abandoned their holdings in Beijing, with several deserters running into the units of Shi and Han and being absorbed into their forces. Feng then left the country for the Soviet Union, and afterwards Shi and Han decided to surrender to Yan. Fang then pledged his allegiance to Chiang Kai-shek, and Shi returned to Fang's forces and reportedly had a very heartfelt apology during which Shi knelt down and cried in front of Fang. Shi was appointed the commander-in-chief of the 5th Division of the Guangzhou Army at Shanxi. But as punishment for Shi's desertion at Beijing, Fang dismissed Shi's commander-in-chief of staff and replaced him with one of his own trusted officers, instead to directly report any of Shi's actions to Fang. But not long after this appointment, however, Shi had the new chief of staff abducted and buried alive as a warning to Fang. So I guess all that crying on the floor really didn't mean much. In 1927, the Guominjun was reorganized into the National Revolutionary Army, and Shi became the deputy commander-in-chief of the First Front Army and the commander of the Fifth Army, where he led them in the northern expedition against the Beiyang government and the forces of the Fan Zhouxing. By March of 1928, Shi was tasked with hunting down Fan, but Fan had set up a base in the Shaolin Monastery. By the time Shi arrived at the monastery to find Fan, the monks had formed an armed fighting force and refused to let any harm be done to Fan, as he was a former member of the temple. In the ensuing battle, over 200 monks were killed, and a fire was set to Dharma Hall. Brigade Commander Su Mingqi then ordered for more of the temple to be set ablaze as punishment for the monks' resistance, and over the course of 40 days, 90% of the buildings were destroyed. In April of that year, Shi participated in the Battle of Yutai Guting against Sun Chaofang, and was the only general to maintain hold over territory afterwards, and the expedition ended in 1928. But in May of 1929, when Fang aligned himself with the New Guangxi clique during the Qiangui War, Shi then defected to Chiang Kai-shek after being bribed and promised to be named provisional chairman, and Shi publicly denounced Fang for committing 10 major crimes, and this marked Shi's second betrayal of Fang. I wonder if there will be more to come. A few months later, in December, however, Shi had a falling out with Chiang Kai-shek over the chairman position, and Shi's refusal to send troops to fight Generals Li Zhongren and Chang Jitang, who were former allies of his. Now, these dudes were allied with Chang's rival, a warlord named Tang Zhenji. The feud culminated in an incident on December 2nd at a railway station where Shi reportedly declared that Old Man Chang is nothing, blast him, and subjected Nanjing to several hours of an artillery barrage with joint forces of Tang, Li, and Chen, aiming at Chiang Kai-shek's office in the presidential palace. Afterwards, Tang was purged and Shi reconnected with Yan, and through him he got in touch with Fang, who put him in charge of the 4th Area Corps of the anti-Chang alliance. Okay, to simplify all of that for your convenience, Chiang Kai-shek wanted Shi to attack 2 of his former bros who had allied themselves with another warlord. Shi said no and defected to the other warlord's team. They then fired artillery at Chang's office and purged the warlord who Shi's 2 bros allied with. Shi then says long time no see to the guy who captured him during the anti-Fangdian War, where Shi deserted Fang. And then the guy who captured Shi helped Shi get back in touch with Fang, who Shi had previously betrayed twice. And then Fang gives Shi command over an army once again. Everybody got that? Great. Back together again, Fang and Shi fought in the Central Plains War with a coalition of other warlords against the nationalist government, which was supported by the Weimar Germans, Czechoslovakia, and Imperial Japan. After several defeats, Shi agreed to side with the KMT government, making this the 3rd betrayal of Fang's forces. Shi had promised generous concessions to other generals under Fang willing to defect. It was all this substantial loss that greatly contributed to Fang announcing his quote-unquote retirement from being a warlord. Despite receiving a 5 million yuan reward and being named commander-in-chief of anti-rebel armies, Shi would still covertly assist the remainder of the anti-Chang forces under the command of Sun Dianying in the Battle of the Eastern Henan, capturing Chaoshang village, and even planned on kidnapping Chang from his command post nearby at another railroad station. But the troops assigned to this mission failed to make it within 30 miles due to the rain. In May of 1931, Shi began working with puppet ruler for Japan, Wang Jingwei, who was promising Shi a position in the reorganized national government and appointing him commander-in-chief of the 5th Army Group and giving him tons of cash. Shi's cooperation with Zhang continued until July 18th, where Shi was informed that Zhang had died of an illness in Beijing and assumed that Zhang's territories were free for the taking. Shi then immediately rallied his troops northward to take it over. Once in Manchuria on the 31st, Shi's soldiers were intercepted in a pincer movement by the armies of Chiang Kai-shek and the very much alive Zhang. Shi then continued to lose battles after this betrayal, and in August he claimed that he was resigning from being a warlord. But come on, this is Shi Yousan. In September of 1932, she was suspected of having taken part in the killing of warlord Zhang Zhouchang, who had been a personal friend of his and was now a governor. You see, the day before, she had hosted a banquet for Zhang to discuss the possibility of invading Manchuria, which had been occupied by the Japanese in 1931. But she expressed a greater interest in the revolver that Zhang carried with him and received the same gun as a present at the end of the festivities. The event was later alleged to have been a ploy intended to get Zhang drunk and to disarm him because she really liked his gun, and also at the train station, Zhang would be shot dead by Zhang Qiqing, a vengeful adoptive son of Zhang Jixing, a general under Feng who was one of his brothers-in-law, and he killed Zhang during the Warlord era. In October of 1932, she went to the Japanese-occupied Changjin province to attend clandestine meetings with Japanese General Kenji Dohara and collaborator Yin Rugang, who had been providing him with real estate for his cooperation. She also assisted and associated again with bandit commander Louis Guintang, who was recruiting former warlords for the Japanese. Chiang Kai-shek was also aware of this treachery and ordered Beijing commanders to arrange for Xi's assassination. So the assassin bribed Xi's assistant to poison the food, but Xi saw how nervous the chef was and forced him at gunpoint to reveal the plot. Shi Yousan then started to scale back his dealings with the Japanese after another collaborating warlord was successfully assassinated in 1933. But in 1934, Shi and Liu conducted bandit operations and instigated anti-ROC sentiment on behalf of the Japanese in border territories. In 1935, Liu survived an assassination attempt, and the assassin claimed to have been from Xi's former inner circle, but the Japanese swept all of that under the rug, so who knows what the truth is. In December, Xi then wanted a government job, but a dude that knew about all of Xi's previous betrayals didn't really want to hire him, and that's pretty understandable. However, the Japanese thought that their boy Xi had done a very great job as a bandit, and they pressured the acceptance of Xi's job. The guy was then forced to make Xi the commander of the 181st Division, supposedly composed of former bandits, and this was all done by the Japanese because the Japanese really didn't want Xi to be near their forces because of his betrayals. During the outbreak of the Second Sino-Japanese War, Xi pledged loyalty to the KMT and Chinese nationalists, but then secretly began plotting to overthrow Chiang Kai-shek once again, both on his own and sometimes with other warlords. Anyway, Xi's troops fought in several battles in 1937, but in 1938 he decided to collude with the communists to conduct greater guerrilla warfare against the Japanese. He planned on using the communists to take over territory for himself, but then he found out he wouldn't be promoted. This next part will be a bit of a speed run because details are very difficult to find, but these events did happen. So, in 1939, he defected from the communists and switched back to the KMT, but then bid on contracts from Japan to attack Chinese partisans against Japanese occupation, which he had created. Also, if you know anything about Japan during this time, the crackdown was exceptionally brutal. Xi also rejoined the communists and led a mutiny, making another betrayal there. Xi then fought several battles against the communists that he had previously led, and then he abandoned many of his officers that he viewed as cannon fodder. In spring of 1940, Xi had kept his allegiance to the Japanese pretty secret and planned on attacking both the KMT and the communists, as well as any group that was fighting for the Chinese, as the Japanese had now promised him to become a puppet ruler in southern China. In late 1940, while leading the 39th Army Group of the National Revolutionary Army, Xi once more served with Gao, but Gao read a telegram in Xi's quarters that revealed his defection to the Japanese, and he confronted Xi with this. Xi let Gao in on his plans to switch sides and tried to convince his blood brother to join him in doing so. Gao was a pretty distinguished officer at this time and declined, saying that he would rather be a hungry ghost than a traitor. Both men then got half of the 39th Army Group on their side against one another. Despite this standoff and the splitting of their forces, Gao kept the betrayal secret until a Japanese ambush occurred on KMT forces that resulted in 2,000 casualties due to Xi's collaboration. Gao then reported the betrayal to Chiang Kai-shek, who ordered Xi's assassination once again. Xi was kept under close watch until December 1st when 4 of Gao's men pinned Xi to the ground and disarmed his bodyguards. Gao then ordered his men to dig a grave for Xi and bury him alive. Initially, Xi vehemently protested and scolded Gao for being a very disloyal friend before he began pleading for his life, like a wuss. The burial then took only 30 minutes and Gao gained command of Xi's unit. The date of Xi's death happened to coincide with his 49th birthday, as he was buried alive. Did you know about Shi Yousan before this video? Is there anything that I left out about him? Are there any other Chinese warlords that you'd like for me to cover? Let me know in the comments. And also, please forgive me for all of my mispronunciations. And thank you for watching.